2025 looks like it's going to be an extremely interesting year for Pokemon, and I'm not even talking just about Legends EA. Yeah, that game is going to be super interesting, but I mean all of the following projects. Like all the Pokemon games that are going to come out after Legends EA. Some remakes, maybe some gap games to fill in between the mainline games. I think the next year as a whole is going to give us a lot of information as to like kind of where Pokemon, Game Freak, and Nintendo are going into the future and kind of where they want to lead the future Pokemon games, and I'm here for it, to be honest. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see the first trailer for Legends EA. So obviously, the first thing we're going to see soon is the Legends EA trailer number 2, which is definitely coming out Pokemon Day 2025, which is late February every single year. And I'm assuming, and I think everybody else online is assuming, that we're going to get a really good trailer. At the same time though, who knows, like it could be something like what we got for the first trailer, just like a teaser. I'm hoping not though, just because we've had a year of silence. So my hope is that we're going to get a pretty in-depth trailer and like at least maybe the starter Pokemon, or maybe a new Mega Evolution, or maybe just like some new regional variants. I want to see something really cool relating to some type of new Pokemon, as well as just kind of like how the city looks and how the gameplay looks. I really hope that the first trailer has some real gameplay in it, because sometimes trailers don't actually show like official gameplay. Before we get to the rest of the video, guys, subscribe to the channel right now, like this video, and check out my website. I just dropped a bunch of brand new things on this website. So this is all from my personal collection. I have a lot of Pokemon stuff, Pokemon plush, other action figures, and it's all from my personal collection that I was holding for a long time. I need to downsize my collection, so I'm like, well, why not make a website? The link to the website is in the description. It's thepixelperk.com. Any support goes an extremely long way though, and I just appreciate even if you check it out. And Pokemon Day could even give us some other information too. Like they could give us hints as to like Generation 10, maybe just like say, hey, we're working on a couple of projects for the Switch 2, because obviously the Switch 2 is a pretty hyped up topic for this year. The Switch 2 is coming out really soon. They just dropped the official trailer for the Switch 2 about like a week and a half ago or so, which is so cool. And I'm feeling ambitious and optimistic, I guess you could say, about the Switch 2 and like Pokemon games on the Switch 2. I think it's going to be good. The Switch was so experimental for every single Pokemon game. They were all different from each other, which I think is great. And I think that Switch 2 is going to hopefully give Nintendo and Game Freak the hardware, the proper hardware, so they could really emphasize the open world games and just make it what they want, because I know they want better open world games, and we know that they care for the games because they're taking time to slow down the release schedule. If Legends EA comes out in November or October or September or something like that, if Legends EA comes out in around like September, October, and November, at the end of the year, this will be a 3-year gap between Pokemon games, or mainline Pokemon games. Legends EA is a mainline Pokemon game. A lot of people say it's not, but it is, which is really cool, and I can't wait to see more Legends games. I mean, there are definitely gonna be more Legends games, but I think we're still a couple of years away. I don't think anything in 2025 is gonna have anything to do with another Legends game. I think we're gonna have to probably wait at least like 2, maybe 3 years until we see something about another Legends game coming out. And the Switch 2 is obviously going to be around for like about 7 to 8 years. That's about how long a console lifespan is. So we'll have about 7 to 8 years of Pokemon games on the Switch 2. And the Switch 1 is still going to get Pokemon games. Legends EA is coming out on the Switch. And Generation 10 is leaked, reported to have a Switch version, a Switch 1 and 2 version, so like a dual release for Pokemon Generation 10, and I'm assuming a lot of other like Nintendo games are still going to be releasing on the Switch. Think about it this way too, I mentioned this in the last couple of videos, Black and White 2 came out like a year after the 3DS even came out, so people had a 3DS and then a DS game came out because Black and White 2 is on the DS. But going along with Generation 5, which is Black and White, a lot of people want Gen 5 remakes soon, or Black and White 3. Generation 5 remakes are coming soon, for sure, because Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl were a couple of years ago, and the Switch 2 is the next console, so the Switch 2 is going to have these Generation 5 remakes. A lot of people, for whatever reason, say that Generation 5 remakes are never happening, which is interesting because it doesn't make sense as to why they wouldn't happen, and they never skipped Generation 5 remakes. I've seen this comment a lot on my channel, and even other people online or other comment sections on other people's channels saying like, why they skip Gen 5 remakes. They didn't skip Gen 5 remakes. Just because they went from Gen 4 to Gen 6, a lot of people think that they skipped Generation 5, but they didn't. They just can't make another remake like back to back, because remakes don't come around all that often. Like Gen 3 to 4 remake, I think that was like what, like a 6-year gap? I might be wrong, I'm just going off the top of my head, but it was a several year gap. Like it was pretty big between Alpha Sapphire Omega Ruby and Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. So I think Generation 5 remakes are still a couple of years away. I think probably 2027, maybe 2028 even. And that's fine because we know that they're also like outsourcing some of their mainline games, or I guess remakes, which is fine because I think that means the game is going to be better. They're going to listen to the fans more and really optimize it. We know that Nintendo and Game Freak are outsourcing some of their games from other companies like Pokemon Works. They just opened up Pokemon Works, and then I think it was Ilka that worked on Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. So some of these games are going to be like kind of co-made by another company, which is why a lot of people think that Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl failed. I still think Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl were a really fun game, but they just weren't really great for remakes because they didn't really go like the extra mile, if that makes sense. But they were still fun games. Like if you could pick up a cheap copy, I'd recommend playing it. A lot of people want some like filler games to fill in between the mainline releases. Like who knows when they're going to release Generation 10. I definitely think Generation 10 is coming out in 2026 just because that's the 30th anniversary of Pokemon. And I feel like they will, especially since we've had almost a 3-year gap in between Pokemon game releases. So it's like they've probably been working on Generation 10 for a while now. And for the filler gap games, a lot of people want a Generation 2 related game, which is kind of crazy to me, but it also makes sense. And I low-key agree as well, because I think Gen 2 is the generation that we've gone the longest time without returning. Like I don't think we've been to Gen 2 in an extreme amount of time. So it's definitely time for that, and it's like one of the most popular comments I've gotten on my channel as far as like what generation people want to go back to. It's always Generation 2 and Gen 5. Gen 3, I would say, is definitely up there. I do get a couple people say they want to go back to Gen 7, which I'm like, that's crazy. But then what else is crazy is that that game is already very old. That Generation 7 is kind of an old Pokemon game at this point, which is crazy to think about. But I think Generation 2 is probably going to have some type of game on the Switch too. I think it would just make sense due to the time that it's been since we've actually been back to Generation 2 or the Johto region, and a lot of people think we're going to get Let's Go Johto or Let's Go games based in Generation 2, which I kind of agree. I low-key think that they will give us another Let's Go game. If they do give us another Let's Go game or Generation 2 game based on, you know, kind of like the Let's Go idea, I hope they kind of make it a little bit better than Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee were fun games, but for me personally, and I think a lot of people agree, they were just kind of like bland. One thing that they did so well in that game was like how you could ride the Pokemon or have them follow you and stuff. They did that perfectly. But at the same time, it's like, would that be a remake? Technically, yes, that would be a remake, and I don't know how Game Freak thinks about that internally, because Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, for some reason in my brain, I never think of those as remakes. They are Generation 1 remakes, but whenever I think about it, I'm always like, oh yeah, that was just like a fun little game to bring us back to Gen 1. But it is a Generation 1 remake, so let's just say that they did give us a Let's Go Johto. Like maybe it could be a Switch 2 launch title or something like that. Or like a Pokemon game that comes out right after the Switch 2. Would they consider that a remake and then postpone Generation 5 remakes a couple more years? I would hope not. And there's also another Pokemon game apparently in the works. According to Riddler Q on Twitter, he tweeted out basically saying that there's a mainline Pokemon game that's in the works right now that's not related to Gen 10 and it's not related to Legends ZA. And that makes us think, like, what could it be? There's literally no other information other than that, which is insane, and I can't wait to see more about that. This game was not in the Terra Leak too, so apparently the Terra Leakers don't actually know what this game is. I don't know how legitimate that is though. Like I said, like I always say, I don't know anything inside, I just know what everyone else knows. So I think that's going to be something exciting, and I can't wait to see what that game is. I hope it's some sort of like Legends spin-off. Still a mainline game, obviously, but I hope it's kind of like a future version, like a Paradox Pokemon game, or like something like the Legends style where we're in a generation or region that's already been out, like we already have been to and already played, but just kind of like a nice spin and play off of it. Sort of like how Legends Arceus was and how Legends ZA is gonna be. Like that just sounds so cool to have some sort of other mainline game, because think about it. The mainline games are like the generation games, like the new, like Generation 8, Gen 9, Gen 10, whatever. And then there's the remakes, which is, you know, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, whatever. And then there's Legends ZA. And apparently this new one, like I said, we don't know what it is, and we don't know if it's gonna be like another series of games, which I'm so happy that Legends ZA is a second installation into the Legends series. It doesn't relate to Legends Arceus at all. Like, it's not like a sequel to that game. It's its own game, but it's still cool that we're getting another Legends game. I do hope we get a Legends Gen 5 game too, eventually. I don't know how that's gonna work though. And the only reason I don't know is because Gen 5 remakes are next up for remakes, so it's like, well, if they're going to give us Gen 5 remakes, they're definitely not going to give us a Generation 5 Legends game. You know, like, they got to do one or the other, and I think they'd probably go with Gen 5 remakes first over a Legends game. They could postpone the remakes and then give us a Legends game. Like I said, I don't think so. Maybe even a Generation 2 Legends game, like a Legends, you know, game based in the Johto region. I think that would be really, really sick. Anyways, if you're a real one and you're watching this far in the video, let me know down below, what Pokemon game do you want to see the most? Like, other than Legends ZA and Generation 10, just leave in the comments like a Pokemon game that you just are dying to have. Like, for example, if you want to see a Generation 5 remake, comment that. Or if you want to see Legends Kyurem or a Legends Johto game, comment that. I'm so curious and I love chatting with you guys. I love seeing you guys have to say. You're a real one if you're watching this far in the video, and I really, really appreciate the support. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already to stay tuned for all things Pokemon. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.